Okay, I'm starting to lay things out here, get the wood, kind of go through it. One thing I did notice in Josh's kit is the trailing edge of the wing. It says there's supposed to be 3/32 by 3/8 trailing edge. And even if I go through the list, I do not see that even on the list. Then there's a checklist where him or Hope or somebody went through and kind of checked off as they went through to make sure the kit was complete. But there's no 3/32 by 3/8 inch wing trailing edge. And look over here, there's a 3/32 stab trailing edges. So I don't know if that's an oversight or what, but nevertheless, what I did was got some wood out of my stash and using my old trusty Master Air Screw balsa stripper, I've cut me a couple of trailing edges for the wing. So no big deal. That's one thing when you've been modeling for a while. I mean, I've got a stash of wood over here. This is kind of like the cut pieces that I kind of go to first. But then the main supply, and years of collecting wood, I've got just boxes of it. Some of it's like, this is all the really light stuff. Some of it I use for indoor, but that's all 4 to 6 pound wood. This is more like grade B, 6 to 8 pound wood. And then this is just kind of years of, I'd have to weigh it out on the scale to find out exactly what it is. And there's big chunks for carbon, propellers, etc. So no big, but yeah, I'm just kind of wondering, Josh, if you watch these at all, if that's intentional or an oversight or what. So anyhow, I'm going to continue to start getting the pieces kind of released from their bondage on the laser cut sheets. This is really cool how these diagonal ribs kind of go together. He's got them so they kind of interlock. So there's a W1 and a W2. So they kind of, as they go diagonal, they interlock, and everything seems to fit really well. So I'm going to kind of lay these out, kind of get things pinned down, and we'll hopefully start gluing stuff together. Okay, here we go. Starting to get some of this parts kind of prepped here. The trailing edge, I've cut those. What I'm going to do, it doesn't really say on the plans, but you can see how the rib, the wing has kind of got this undercamber to it. And so if I put that trailing edge flat, it's going to look like that. I kind of want to tilt it up a little bit. So what I'm going to do, I've added some 1/32 shins just out of the scrap out of the laser cut sheet. Just add little pieces there so that when I put this in, it's going to tilt up the front of that trailing edge just a little bit so that that piece fits a little bit better. Hopefully you can see that. So rather than a flat like that against the board, tilt it up just a little bit, gets a little better angle. So I think that'll look better. So when using this solvent-based cement, celluloid, the cement, you want to basically pre-glue, do like a double glue joint is what they call it. So what I'm going to do is I've got the bottom spar here laid down, and I'm going to kind of make some pencil marks, and I'll go through and just add small droplets of glue that can go ahead and basically pre-glue so it can be drying. So everywhere these ribs are going, I want to put a little dab of glue on the top and the sides. So right here on the end, just a little bit of glue. Kind of soak in a little bit, make a stronger joint when we do the final gluing. Hopefully that makes sense. spots of glue. So now it's kind of ready to go. So I'm going to set that down here and pin it down so it holds flat up against the plans. Got these really good modeling pins I got from FAI Model Supply. Okay, so kind of the same deal here on the trailing edge. Give it some little pre-glue spots, just making little light marks on the balsa so I know where to kind of do the little dab of glue. It doesn't seem like much, but this does make a pretty big difference in the strength of the glue joint. So like I said, I've got these little bitty tabs here to kind of raise up the leading edge of the trailing edge to make that fit a little bit better. Let's see if I can do this. So I think now the thing to do is to start doing some pre-gluing on the ribs. Same kind of an idea. Just give a little dabs on each place where you're going to be gluing all the spars where they go together. And I'm just going to go through and do that for each one of these so those can be soaking. Then when we get ready to glue them in for the final assembly, they'll go together a little bit better. So I'm going to get all that done, and then when I come back, we'll be gluing the ribs on. One thing I noticed as I was starting to get this kind of dry fitting things was where this bottom spar fits into that rib. That's going to need to be basically put a shim underneath here. Let's see if I can kind of illustrate, but that's sitting flat on the board. You can see there's a gap there. So I need to get a little shim under there. So I got some more of these shims out of the 1/32 stock. And so what I'm going to do is kind of shim that spar up so that that will fully fit into the bottom of the rib and basically sit in there the way it's supposed to. So now where that rib is sitting in there, it'll sit in all the way. And this is kind of one of the times where you just carefully dry fit things, like where this fits up against this trailing edge. I've got a little sanding block, so you just kind of give it a little, bevel it a little bit. Make sure there's a good, tight, dry fit. Looks like these W2s need to go in first because the W1s, they slot in this way. So I'm going to fit all of these diagonal ribs, get them all fit, and get them started gluing down, and then we can go with the other set that kind of, see how it kind of indexes in there, like that. So I'm going to continue to do that, kind of get the ribs dry fitted, and then start gluing them in. Okay, this is where I'm at. I've got the ribs kind of glued down with the spar and the trailing edge. Trying to get good joints on each one. I'm probably just going to go ahead and let that dry before I start messing with these carbon spars. But I have to do some trimming there, but they fit in these little round slots there. There's the top spar, and then there's also the shear webs that need to go in here. I'm not sure if they go on the front side or the back side, but Anyhow, so that's how it looks right now. Trying to get a good fit, you know, here, 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 with a minimal amount of glue. So anyhow, let that cure, and then we'll come back and try and finish that panel. Oh, progress update. Got the leading edge and the top spar on. So I'm letting that kind of dry. Then I'll probably take that off the board. I probably won't put the shear webs on until I've got the dihedral set for that end. I've started kind of getting the pieces set out for the for this wingtip. But what I'll do is I'll let that all dry, and then I'll face up that for that dihedral, because that'll have to come up that way, because that'll be a little bit shorter there. I have to get that angle right. But yeah, so that's where we're at now. Got that carbon leading edge on. Looks kind of funny. I'm not used to that, but yeah. So I'm setting up to start gluing up the right side inner wing panel. So this is the one where you need to make sure you get the wash in built into the wing. So what I've done is, I'm trying to get in here so you can kind of see it, but I've cut like a wedge. That's the span of that section, and I've blocked it up 3/16 on this end and down to just, you know, nothing on that end. So that way you get the, you know, kind of a linear increase from end to end, and get everything going. So when you're putting it together, though, when you're putting the ribs in here, you got to make sure you support that, because the gap is going to be fairly big on this end. So I've added a little shim there. Then I keep this little Tupperware bowl full of pieces of scrap balsa, and I use these for like clamping things and blocking things up. But I saved all these little wedges. I think that was from, I think that's when I had a stack of ribs I was cutting. So I ended up with all these wedges. So what I'm going to do is, as I put those ribs in here, kind of put these wedges in to kind of support, to make sure that that bottom spar is in contact with the edge there in that slot. So I'm going to continue to kind of set this all up, and then I'll take another video that kind of shows it after I've got it glued together. But this section is kind of dry, so I've kept that. Don't glue any of these end section ribs in yet until you set kind of the dihedral. And just kind of, since I'm filming now, I do like to draw that out full size. So off the plans, I got the dimensions, but this way I can kind of use this as a reference to make sure that, you know, I get the rib set at the right angle, and get the dihedral set right. So I can bring that piece over here, set it down, make sure all those look good as I glue in the dihedrals. But anyhow, so I'll be back after I've kind of got this this panel glued together. So this is what it looks like here. Waiting for the cement to kind of dry. So you have to kind of be kind of delicate. I mean, those ribs are only 1/32 inch thick, so it's a little delicate, but it makes for a strong, lightweight structure whenever it's all done. So, as you can kind of see, you got to watch the rib leading edge. Make sure you're building in the wash in. Got it set up for the dihedral, so I measured, made a little fixture there. It's kind of fiddly, but I got everything set and pinned in, so now let that cure. There's some thin dihedral braces there. Then, of course, when this is done, probably go ahead and start adding some shear webs just to make it a little more rigid. I keep the right-hand side pinned to the board, so we make sure we keep that that wash in. But that's kind of how I've got it set up for or the center dihedral. To kind of show how I'm fitting these solid carbon spars. I'm almost down to the last one. I realized I hadn't videotaped any of it. But what I'm doing is I'm kind of laying the spars in the little slots there in the ribs. Since they're black, I can't really make a pencil mark, so I've got like a little white paint marker here, paint pen marker. Make a tiny tick mark on it with the paint marker. And what I've been doing is I get a razor saw. I basically just kind of scribe it a little bit on that mark. But it's easier to get the clean cut if you use a pair of side cutters. So go right to that notch I just made and then snip. So that cuts it to the proper length. Then I'm using, of course, the model cement to put these in place. So then it's just a matter of dabbing the glue on here. Cement. And laying them in the slots. I can make sure I've got enough cement there to keep things together. The cement kind of tries to run a little bit. Just make sure they're all glued in well. Doesn't take very much cement. I'm going to zoom in here and show you how it looks. I'm also kind of finishing up the shear webs. I'm getting the shear webs in here too, getting them to kind of fit nice. So I'm getting pretty close on the wing. There'll be some sanding, but it'll be done.